Welcome to another episode of Boring History for Sleep, where history whispers and the world gently fades away. Tonight, we invite you to lie back, close your eyes, and let your thoughts drift into the desert winds of Central Asia. Carried gently on the back of a horse, unlike any other. This isn't just any horse. This is the Akhal-Teke, a golden steed born from myth, raised by warriors, and cherished by emperors. Over the next hour, you'll journey softly through time, across sun-baked steppes, royal stables, and silent caravans. You don't need to remember every date. There's no quiz at the end. Just allow your breath to slow, and let the rhythmic hoofbeats of history lull you into restful sleep. If you enjoy calming, story-driven journeys like this, feel free to subscribe or leave a quiet comment letting us know what dreams this tale gave you. Now, let us begin the shimmering story of the Akhal-Teke horse. The golden horse of the desert, the epic story of the Akhal-Teke. Imagine a horse with a coat that glistens like molten gold under the desert sun, a creature so swift and enduring that an ancient emperor sent thousands of soldiers across Central Asia just to obtain it. Envision a steed so revered that poets dubbed it a heavenly horse, and warriors believed it carried the blessings of the gods. This isn't fantasy. It's the true story of the Akhal-Teke, one of the oldest and most breathtaking horse breeds on earth. From legends of antiquity to the modern showrings of Ashgabat, the Akhal-Teke's journey is a tale woven through 3,000 years of history, full of adventure, passion, and survival against the odds. We'll travel from the ancient Silk Road to the imperial courts of China, from the battles of nomadic tribes to the racetracks of Turkmenistan, following the hoofprints of these golden horses. An Akhal-Teke horse, displaying the breed's characteristic metallic sheen and elegant build. These golden horses have captivated human admiration for millennia with their beauty and endurance. Our story begins on the sun-baked plains of Central Asia thousands of years ago. Long before cities and empires rose, the ancestors of the Akhal-Teke roamed the great steppes between the Caspian Sea and the Altai Mountains. As the climate began to dry around 10,000 BC, the wild horses of this region adapted to survive in harsh conditions. Over generations, stocky steppe ponies evolved into lean, long-legged horses with slim, high-set heads and large eyes. Traits that would later define the Akhal-Teke. These early horses developed svelte frames and needed only modest food and water. Their necks grew longer to scan the horizon for predators, and their coats often shone in light colors that blended with the golden sand of the deserts. In ancient carvings from 2000 BC, we find depictions of slender, high-headed horses with a pale golden coat capable of great endurance, very much like the Akhal-Tekes we know today. As human civilization spread, these horses caught the attention of early peoples. Nomadic tribes domesticated them and made them partners in survival. By the time of the first great empires, Central Asian horses were renowned across continents. They appeared under many names in ancient records: Median, Nicaean, Bactrian, Sogdian, Parthian horses, but all described a spirited, desert-bred horse prized for speed and stamina. In fact, Greek historians noted the fame of Central Asian steeds. Already in the time of Alexander the Great, the horses of Sogdiana were famous, wrote one 19th century scholar, citing ancient sources. It's even believed by some that Bucephalus, the cherished war horse of Alexander himself, was an Akhal-Teke, or a close ancestor of the breed. Described as a tall, dark horse with a fierce spirit, Bucephalus was said to be of the best Thessalian strain, likely mixed with Persian and Scythian blood, hallmarks of the Akhal-Teke's heritage. While we can't be certain, the idea that Alexander's mighty steed may have come from these very lineages adds a mythical allure to the Akhal-Teke's early story. No episode illustrates the allure of these horses better than the tale of the Han Dynasty Emperor Wu and the fabled heavenly horses. In the 2nd century BC, Emperor Wu Ti of China learned of magnificent blood-sweating horses bred in a far-off land called Fergana, Dayuan, in Central Asia. These horses, very likely ancestors of the Akhal-Teke, had incredible strength and endurance. They ran like the wind, and legend said, sweated blood, which the Chinese interpreted as a divine sign. In reality, their sweat was tinged red from a skin parasite. But in those days, it seemed proof these were no ordinary horses. The Chinese dubbed them Tian Ma, heavenly horses, believing they came from celestial stables. Emperor Wu was so captivated that he believed riding one might even grant immortality. When diplomacy failed to obtain these wonders, Dayuan's ruler not only refused to sell his prized argamax, the local word for divine horses, but allegedly murdered the Han envoys. Emperor Wu launched what became known as the War of the Heavenly Horses. In 104 BC, he sent a force of 6,000 cavalry and 20,000 infantry across the treacherous desert to seize the Fergana horses. That first expedition struggled and had to turn back, but the determined emperor tried again 2 years later with an even larger army. After a long siege of the Fergana capital, the Chinese emerged victorious. The reward was spectacular. The Han forces secured several thousand of the coveted horses to bring back to China. According to historical records, 3,000 elite horses were acquired for the imperial stud, along with many smaller ones. Emperor Wu finally had his heavenly horses. And indeed, over the next centuries, those Central Asian bloodlines rejuvenated Chinese cavalry mounts. By the Tang dynasty, hundreds of thousands of Fergana-descended horses stood in the imperial stables. This east-west clash over horses shows just how valuable the Akhal-Teke's forebears were. The Chinese didn't go to war over silk or gold. They went to war over golden horses. And it paid off. Armed with these superior mounts, the Han Empire gained a decisive advantage over their nomadic foes. Chinese poets even composed odes to praise the heavenly horses. And for a time, these steeds were worshipped in China as mythical creatures. It's astonishing to think that the Akhal-Teke's ancestors so enchanted one of the world's great emperors that he risked armies to obtain them. Few breeds, if any, can boast that they changed the course of history. But this one certainly did. While Chinese emperors extolled them as heavenly, others simply called them the best horses on earth. Ancient Persians knew of these Central Asian horses too. The Parthian and Median breeds mentioned in Greek and Persian chronicles likely included horses of Akhal-Teke type. The Achaemenid Persians kept a prized herd known as the Nisaean horses, famed for pulling the chariots of Persian kings. It's very possible those were among the ancestors of today's Akhal-Tekes, as Nisa, one seat of the Parthian Empire, lies in what is now Turkmenistan, the Akhal-Teke's homeland. Fast forward to the 13th century. Even as Genghis Khan's Mongol hordes stormed westward on their sturdy steppe ponies, the Turkic horsemen of Khwarezm, and Khiva in Central Asia sought out these taller, faster horses to strengthen their cavalry. The Oghuz Turks, forebears of the Turkmen people, became known for breeding these superb horses and were hired as mercenary cavalry by neighboring states for their prowess. The great conqueror Tamerlane, who ruled in the 14th century, so respected the Turkmen horse that he reportedly gave 5,000 Arabian mares to Turkmen breeders to mix into their bloodlines and further enhance the breed. Timur's program perhaps added refinement, though Turkmen horses remain distinctly different from pure Arabians. Taller, leaner, and built for long-distance strength rather than short bursts of speed. In the late 13th century, the Venetian explorer Marco Polo encountered these horses on his Silk Road journey. Traveling through the region of today's Turkmenistan, he met the people he called Turkomans. Polo was not terribly impressed by the Turkomans themselves, sniffing at their barbarous language, but he lavished praise on their horses. In the very first pages of his travels, Marco Polo noted the good Turkoman horses and remarked that their hooves were so hard that they did not need to be shod with iron. This was no exaggeration. Living on dry, rocky ground, the breed had evolved strong hooves, and even today, Akhal-Tekes are rarely shod on their home turf. For an experienced traveler like Marco Polo to single out these horses tells us they stood out even among the many breeds he saw on his 13th century odyssey. By this time, the horses of Turkmenistan had acquired a near mystical reputation. The Persians often called them argamaks, meaning divine or sacred horses, a term later adopted by the Russians as well. Indeed, legend blended with reality. One colorful Central Asian myth claimed that these horses were born from the union of mortal mares with supernatural stallions that roamed free in the mountains. The fact that they sometimes sweated blood only reinforced the idea that a heavenly essence flowed in their veins. It's easy to imagine a caravan trader or a Khan, upon seeing a sleek Akhal-Teke shimmering in the sun, believing such a horse was a gift from the heavens. No people are more closely linked to the Akhal-Teke than the Turkmen, the horse's native breeders. For centuries, even millennia, various Turkic-speaking tribes in the Karakum Desert and Kopet Dagh Oasis regions of modern Turkmenistan cultivated this breed as their most precious treasure. To the nomadic Turkmen, a fast, hardy horse was literally a lifeline, a means to hunt, to herd, to fight, and to flee when necessary. As one traditional Turkmen proverb says, "Water is a Turkmen's life, a horse is his wings, and a carpet is his soul." Horses were the wings that gave these desert people freedom of movement and an edge in warfare. The Turkmen even wove images of their beloved horses into their famous carpets, cherishing both as key parts of their culture. The Turkmen approach to horse breeding was unique. Each clan or tribe maintained its own bloodlines, carefully selecting the toughest and fastest stallions for breeding and preserving pedigrees through oral history. Notably, one tribe, the Teke tribe, became preeminent in raising these horses in the Akhal oasis, hence the breed eventually taking the name Akhal-Teke, Akhal oasis plus Teke tribe. But before that name arose, the Turkmen simply called their horses by strain names, or just Turkmen horses. They raised them with almost obsessive care. European travelers in the 19th century marveled at how Turkmen nomads treated their horses like family. A prize stallion would be tethered right beside the nomad's tent under constant watch. At night, the horse might even be brought inside or just outside the dwelling to keep it safe. Mares and foals were allowed to roam and graze, but riding stallions were fed by hand and kept under blankets to protect them. The daily diet of an Akhal-Teke in those days was a special recipe for strength. Turkmen horses didn't graze lush pastures. There were none in the desert. Instead, they were fed high-protein, high-fat foods in small quantities. One common treat was a mixture of barley, alfalfa, eggs, and butter or mutton fat. Travelers observed Turkmen horsemen soaking flatbread in mutton fat and feeding it to their horses to keep the coat glossy. This rich diet, akin to an athlete's high-energy meal, helped the horses build stamina without bulk. The result was a sleek, muscular animal, dry in build, meaning no excess flesh, and ready to run for hours. The care regimen was meticulous and somewhat unusual. For grooming, Turkmens did not use brushes or combs. Instead, a horseman would scrape the horse's coat with a blunt knife to remove dirt, then polish it with a cloth or his own sleeve. They kept the mane and tail sparse, often trimming the mane very short or even shedding it entirely, for the sake of cleanliness and a streamlined form. And crucially, the Turkmens blanketed their horses heavily. A prized stallion might be swaddled in 2, 3, or even up to 7 layers of felt cloth from head to tail. This practice astonished outsiders, but it had purpose. In winter, the felts kept the horse warm against biting desert winds, and in summer, they protected against flies and sunburn. More subtly, the constant blanketing and sweating helped maintain a short, fine coat with an uncanny metallic shine. Turkmen horses, when unveiled, looked like living bronze statues, their coats glinting in hues of gold, bronze, or silver. Training was equally rigorous. Young horses were handled gently but taught early to be resilient. Turkmen riders often practiced long-distance rides with minimal water to harden their mounts for desert travel. In preparation for raids or races, a stallion might be put on a sparse diet for a few days so that it learned to perform on an empty stomach and go without drinking. A life-saving adaptation for crossing waterless sands. The result of this upbringing was a horse of legendary endurance and loyalty. Raised among people and treated almost like a comrade, an Akhal-Teke stallion became extraordinarily loyal to its master. Travelers wrote that a Turkmen horse would form a bond so strong that it would follow its owner anywhere and even stand guard for him. The stallion, brought up amongst human dwellings, is gentle toward his rider and extremely intelligent, noted one 1880s observer. Turkmen sayings celebrated the sacrifice required. To turn a colt into a horse, the owner becomes a dog, meaning one must work like a dog to train a great horse. This deep companionship between nomad and horse is part of what makes the Akhal-Teke's history so moving. These animals were not just livestock, but true partners in the Turkmen way of life. It's worth painting a mental picture of a Turkmen rider of old. He saddles up his Akhal-Teke stallion with a high-peaked wooden saddle, padded with felt and covered in a fine carpet or silk cloth. He adorns the horse with necklaces of turquoise and carnelian beads, believing the stones ward off evil spirits and protect them both on their journey. Both horse and rider are lean, hardened by the desert, and utterly reliant on each other. As they set off across the Karakum sands, the horse's hooves kick up dust, but it strides effortlessly, head high, eyes bright. The rider knows that with this horse, he can outpace enemies, outlast thirst, and if need be, escape to the horizon. In Turkmen epic tales and songs, horses often take on almost human importance. A hero was not truly a hero unless he had a mighty horse. The Akhal-Teke thus galloped not only through the deserts, but also through the very soul of Turkmen culture. By the 18th and 19th centuries, the outside world began to learn more about these remarkable horses. As the Russian Empire expanded southward into Central Asia in the 1800s, military officers, adventurers, and scientists encountered the Turkmen and their horses. The Turkmen, fiercely independent, often clashed with Persian and later Russian forces, and their swift Akhal-Teke horses gave them a tactical edge in these conflicts. In fact, during the Russian campaigns of the 1870s, the Turkmen, especially the Teke tribe, were notoriously difficult to subdue because of their horses' speed, as one account notes. Turkmen horsemen could raid and disappear into the desert with alarming quickness, frustrating their adversaries. The pivotal confrontation came in 1881 at the Battle of Galloped, where the Russians besieged the Teke stronghold. Tragically, tens of thousands of Turkmen were killed or displaced. And recognizing the importance of the horses, Russian troops slaughtered large numbers of the Teke horses as well. The rationale was brutal. If we kill the horses, the Teke won't survive, Russian commanders reputedly said. This dark moment nearly drove the breed to extinction in its homeland. One Turkmen breeder later recounted that the breed almost disappeared after this mass killing. It was a grievous blow. Imagine centuries of careful breeding lost in days. Yet, the Akhal-Teke did survive, thanks in part to a twist of fate. The very conquerors who decimated the Turkmen horses came to admire them. One Russian general, General Kuropatkin, was so impressed by the horses' performance, even as he fought against them, that after the conquest, he established a stud farm in the Akhal oasis. He took some of the best surviving horses and began breeding them, determined to preserve this wonder horse for the Russian Empire's benefit. It was around this time, in the late 19th century, that the breed formally acquired the name Akhal-Teke. The term combined Akhal, referring to the line of oases along the Kopet Dag Mountains where the Tek tribe lived, with Teke, the tribe's name. Prior to this, they were often just called Turkmen horses, or by strain names like Teke, Yamud, or Merv horses. But now, Akhal-Teke entered official use. In 1897, the first imperial stud farm for Akhal-Tekes was founded at the Akhal Oasis, and Russian officers began registering the horses and keeping written pedigrees. This was a turning point. What had been an ancient oral tradition was now becoming a scientific breeding program. Over the next few decades, Russia, and later the Soviet Union, would play a major role, both positive and negative, in the breed's fate. Under Russian and Soviet oversight, stud books were published, starting in the 1930s, to catalog all pure Akhal-Tekes. The stud book was officially closed in 1932, meaning only horses from registered purebred parents could be included going forward. By 1941, the Soviets had documented over 700 Akhal-Tekes in their first breed registry. This effort helped prevent further crossbreeding and loss of the pure strain. It's important to note that before the stud book closure, some crossbreeding had occurred. In the early 20th century, a few Akhal-Teke mares and stallions were bred with thoroughbreds, English racehorses, in an attempt to create a faster endurance horse. The resulting Anglo-Teke crosses did gain speed, but many lacked the hardiness of purebreds and couldn't cope with the harsh Central Asian climate. After a famous test, more on that soon, proved the pure Akhal-Teke's superiority, the decision was made that any horses born after 1936 with non-Akhal-Teke blood would not be considered pure. This ensured that today's Akhal-Tekes are all descended from the old lines, though virtually all of them do carry a little thoroughbred ancestry from those early 1900s crosses. For the Turkmen people, now subjects of the Russian Empire and later the Soviet Union, the horse remained a matter of deep pride. In a sense, the breed had new protectors in the form of Russian cavalrymen and hippologists who valued its qualities. During the late Tsarist era, Akhal-Tekes were occasionally gifted to foreign dignitaries or shown at international exhibitions, wowing audiences with their metallic coats. They even began influencing other breeds. Turkoman Akhal-Teke stallions had been used in the 18th century to found the English thoroughbred breed. The foundation's sire Byerly Turk is thought to have been a Turkoman horse, and the Darli Arabian, another foundation sire of the thoroughbred, was reportedly bred by Turkmen nomads in the Persian region. In the early 20th century, one Akhal-Teke stallion named Turkmen Ati was imported to Europe and left his mark on the Trakehner warm-blood breed. Other Central Asian breeds like the Karabayr of Uzbekistan and the Karabakh horse of the Caucasus also absorbed Akhal-Teke blood to improve their speed and endurance. So the Akhal-Teke was quietly seeding its genetics far and wide. Perhaps the most dramatic demonstration of the Akhal-Teke's legendary stamina came in the year 1935. In that summer, a group of Turkmen riders and their Akhal-Tekes undertook an epic long-distance ride that would go down in history. Their goal was audacious: to prove to Soviet authorities just how tough their national horse was by riding from Ashgabat in Turkmenistan all the way to Moscow, a journey of roughly 4,200 kilometers. This grueling trek would take them across deserts, mountains, and steppe, essentially retracing part of the old Silk Road route, but at high speed. "15 Akhal-Teke horses and riders set out on this trek. The most daunting segment was crossing the Karakum Desert. In that era, there were no easy water points along the way. Incredibly, the riders pushed through approximately 3 days, over 250 miles of desert without any water at all for their horses. This seems nearly impossible. Yet the Akhal-Tekes managed it, surviving on their reserves and the sparse fodder they could find. After 84 days of continuous riding, the team arrived in Moscow to great fanfare. The horses, though undoubtedly leaner, were in good health and had proven their mettle beyond any doubt. This journey, often called the Ashgabat to Moscow endurance ride, instantly became part of Akhal-Teke lore. It showed that no other breed of horse could match this level of endurance over distance. Not even the part thoroughbred crosses that Soviet breeders had once favored. In fact, the pure Akhal-Tekes finished the trip in far better condition than some horses of mixed breeds that attempted it. The success of this ride led directly to the policy of preserving pure bloodlines thereafter. As one account put it, once more an Akhal-Teke had demonstrated the breed's legendary endurance, and in doing so, helped save the breed from being diluted. One can imagine the scene in Red Square when these Turkmen riders, wearing traditional attire, rode in on their desert steeds after 3 months on the trail. It must have astonished the onlookers, and perhaps even Joseph Stalin himself. The feat certainly caught the attention of the Soviet leadership. Not long after, the Akhal-Teke was officially declared a national treasure of Turkmen culture, albeit within the Soviet framework. During World War II, the Akhal-Teke had a quieter role. Cavalry was less prominent in that mechanized war. However, one symbolic appearance underscored the breed's prestige. At the Victory Parade in Moscow in 1945, Marshal Georgy Zhukov, the famed Soviet commander, chose to ride a brilliant white Akhal-Teke stallion as he reviewed the troops. This stallion, with its snowy coat and proud bearing, trotted at the head of the procession carrying the hero of the Soviet Union, an image seen by thousands and captured in photographs. It was a statement that the USSR recognized the Akhal-Teke as a horse of honor. Some sources say the stallion's name was Arab, a line-bred Akhal-Teke who became quite famous in breeding circles thereafter. The post-war era brought an unexpected kind of glory to the breed: Olympic fame. In the 1950s and 60s, a dark bay Akhal-Teke stallion named Absent took the international dressage world by storm. Ridden by Soviet equestrian Sergei Filatov, Absent competed in the 1960 Rome Olympics and charmed everyone with his elegance and poise. He won the Olympic gold medal in individual dressage in 1960, achieving the highest honor in that discipline. It was the first time an Akhal-Teke had shone on the global sports stage. Not stopping there, Absent continued to compete. He earned bronze medals in the 1964 Tokyo Olympics and placed fourth in 1968. Nicknamed the Black Swan for his grace, despite not being the typical golden color, Absent proved that Akhal-Tekes were not only tough war horses, but also capable of great finesse, intelligence, and trainability required in high-level dressage. His success inspired breeders in Russia to consider the breed for other equestrian sports like show jumping and eventing, where their agility and stamina could be assets. Yet, even as these individual horses earned accolades, the breed as a whole was facing a crisis back in Turkmenistan. The late 1950s and early 1960s, Khrushchev's era, were hard times. The Soviet Union was prioritizing industry and agriculture, and many traditional horse breeding programs were neglected. Horses were seen as less important in the age of tractors and trucks. In a sad turn, large numbers of Akhal-Tekes were slaughtered for meat in the 1950s, victims of government quotas that treated horses as livestock for consumption. Local Turkmen people, who held a taboo against eating horse meat from their sacred breed, were horrified. Many refused to eat the meat even as the authorities pushed it. By the 1970s, the Akhal-Teke breed had dwindled to critical levels. One estimate claims that at one point, only about 250 pure Akhal-Tekes remained worldwide. In Turkmenistan itself, by the late Soviet period, fewer than 1,000 were left. It looked as if this ancient line might vanish due to modernization and indifference. Salvation for the Akhal-Teke came with changing attitudes and eventually political changes. In the 1970s and 80s, a few dedicated breeders in the Soviet Union, both Turkmen and Russians, worked quietly to preserve what they could. Then in 1991, Turkmenistan gained independence as the Soviet Union dissolved. And suddenly, the Akhal-Teke was elevated to a national symbol of the new country. The first president of Turkmenistan, Sapar Murat Niyazov, happened to be from the Teke tribal lineage himself. He enthusiastically promoted the Akhal-Teke as the pride of the nation. Under his leadership, the Turkmen government banned the export of the best horses to prevent loss of blood stock, invested in new breeding farms, and established the state company Turkmen Atlari to oversee their care. Niyazov reportedly spent millions constructing an equestrian center and gave Akhal-Teke horses as diplomatic gifts to foreign leaders as a gesture of goodwill. Owning and cherishing these horses became a matter of national prestige once again. One particular stallion, Yanardagh, became a celebrity. A gleaming golden dun Akhal-Teke born in 1991, the year of independence. Janardog was so stunning that he was named World Champion Akhal-Teke in 1999. Niyazov acquired him for the state and made Janardog's likeness the centerpiece of Turkmenistan's coat of arms in 2003. Even today, if you look at Turkmenistan's national emblem, you'll see a golden horse circled by rug patterns. That horse is Janardog. His image also adorned currency, the 50 maneh banknote, and a large monument in Ashgabat. In this way, the Akhal-Teke was enshrined as the national animal, on par with how some nations revere the eagle or lion. Turkmenistan began celebrating an annual Day of the Horse every last Sunday of April to honor the Akhal-Teke. This holiday features horse parades, races, and even beauty contests for the breed. In 2011, Niyazov's successor, President Gurbanguly Berdimuhamedov, expanded the festivities to include an official Akhal-Teke beauty pageant, where the most gorgeous horses are awarded prizes. Special traditions have been revived and created. For instance, Turkmen breeders hold naming ceremonies for foals, a ritual acknowledging the foal's lineage and hoped for glory. And an interesting law was passed that once an Akhal-Teke is named, its name cannot be changed, as if to underscore each horse's unique identity. Another decree requires that when an Akhal-Teke dies, it must be given a proper burial attended by a government official, reflecting the profound respect accorded to these animals. Thanks to these efforts, the Akhal-Teke population has rebounded from its low point. From about 1,000 horses in the late 1980s, the numbers rose to roughly 3,000 by the mid-1990s in Turkmenistan alone, and continued climbing. Worldwide, there are now estimated to be around 6,600 Akhal-Tekes, still a rare breed, but no longer on the brink of extinction. Turkmenistan itself today keeps several thousand and tightly controls export of breeding stock. Typically, only select stallions are sold abroad. Meanwhile, breeders in Russia, Europe, and North America have taken a growing interest in Akhal-Tekes. Small communities of enthusiasts from the United States to Germany, from China to Australia, are working with this breed, drawn by its beauty and history. In Russia especially, a few major stud farms, such as in Stavropol Krai, have become leading centers for Akhal-Teke breeding, aiming to recreate the breed to its former greatness, as one breeder put it. Akhal-Teke horses racing in Ashgabat, Turkmenistan. The country's modern hippodromes host regular races and exhibitions featuring the breed, celebrating its speed and cultural importance. What makes the Akhal-Teke so mesmerizing, beyond its rich history, are its physical and temperamental characteristics. To see one is to behold a creature of striking elegance, typically standing around 15 to 16 hands high, approximately 60-64 inches at the shoulder. They are tall but slim, with a graceful dry musculature, meaning there's no excess bulk, just sleek, defined muscle beneath fine skin. They carry their head high on a long arched neck. The profile often shows a delicate bone structure, a straight or slightly convex nose, large expressive eyes set wide apart, and long ears that give an alert, regal look. Their chest is narrow but deep, and their legs are long and sinewy, built more for distance than for heavy loads. Perhaps their most famous trait is the coat. Many Akhal-Tekes have a unique sheen, as if dipped in gold. Colors like golden buckskin, palomino, or shiny dun are highly prized, though they also come in blacks, bays, chestnuts, and grays, often with that same metallic luster. When an Akhal-Teke moves, it has a distinctive gait. Thanks to a peculiar shoulder structure, its trot is incredibly smooth, almost gliding, with a long stride that seems to float. Riders often comment that riding an Akhal-Teke feels like being on the second floor because of their high carriage and effortless motion. Temperament-wise, these horses are known for their intelligence and sensitivity. Centuries of close human contact have made them bond strongly with their handlers. An Akhal-Teke tends to be loyal and one-person oriented, remembering kindness or harshness for a long time. They are often described as proud or spirited. A well-treated Akhal-Teke will carry itself with a confident, almost aristocratic air, fully aware of its heritage. At the same time, they can be quite tough and hardy. They weather extreme heat and cold well, and have remarkable thirst and hunger tolerance, a remnant of their desert survival genes. It's said an Akhal-Teke can gallop full tilt for hours without tiring. An exaggeration perhaps, but not far off given their record of endurance. Modern tests in endurance riding competitions have proven their stamina on par with, and sometimes exceeding, the famous Arabian horses. Culturally, the Akhal-Teke has transcended from being a war horse to a symbol of national identity and pride. In Turkmenistan today, these horses appear in ceremonial events and even weddings. It's a tradition that a Turkmen groom may arrive on an elegantly decorated Akhal-Teke to carry off his bride, showcasing the horse as a symbol of honor and prosperity. The decoration of Akhal-Tekes is itself an art. Women artisans create elaborate silver jewelry, embroidered blankets, and headpieces to adorn the horses on special occasions. These traditions were recognized globally when in 2023 the art of Akhal-Teke horse breeding and the traditions of horse decoration was inscribed on UNESCO's representative list of intangible cultural heritage of humanity. This UNESCO listing highlights how important the breed is to the cultural fabric of Turkmenistan. It's not just about the animal itself, but the entire way of life, skills, and arts that have developed around it. Moreover, Akhal-Tekes continue to impress horse lovers around the world. They are seen in international competitions occasionally, and while their numbers are small, those who have them swear by their versatility. You might find an Akhal-Teke competing in a show jumping class in Europe, racing on a flat track in Russia. Turkmenistan holds races exclusively for Akhal-Tekes, or being ridden by endurance riders in the United States. A few have even made it into films and media. Owing to their striking appearance, they simply look like fairy tale horses, too splendid to be real. As we conclude our journey through time with the Akhal-Teke, one cannot help but feel a sense of awe. Here is a breed that has seen empires rise and fall, that has been the companion of nomads and the delight of emperors. It galloped alongside Scythian warriors, carried Alexander's conquests, if only by bloodline, quenched the ambitions of a Han emperor, and later became the living emblem of a modern nation. Through it all, the golden horse endured, sometimes against great odds, thanks to the devotion it inspired in people. The Akhal-Teke story is a reminder of how intertwined human and animal histories can be. Had the Turkmen not cherished and defended these horses so stubbornly, we might not have them today. Had the Russians not taken an interest, the breed might have vanished in the 20th century. And without the post-Soviet Turkmen resurgence, the world might never have learned of their full glory again. But instead, here they are, about 6,000 strong worldwide, glistening in the sun as they did for ancient kings. In the quiet of a desert evening, one can imagine a scene from long ago. A Turkmen elder sitting by his tent, his loyal Akhal-Teke stallion nickering softly beside him. The stars come out over the Karakum, and perhaps the old man sings a soft melody praising his horse, calling it his wings, his comrade, his pride. That connection, built on trust and love, has carried through the ages. And it continues today whenever a rider forms a bond with this extraordinary horse. As you drift to sleep with these images in mind, think of the Akhal-Teke galloping under an endless sky, a creature of grace and fire, born of the desert, tempered by history, and forever carrying the spirit of a proud people. Its story is not just a history of a horse breed, but a living, breathing saga of beauty, endurance, and the unbreakable bond between human and horse. The legend of the heavenly horse lives on, golden and eternal, in every Akhal-Teke hoofbeat across the sand. And so, our golden steed returns to its resting place. We've traveled across centuries, through myths and deserts, emperors and nomads, war and wonder. The Akhal-Teke, ever graceful, remains a living echo of humanity's bond with beauty, strength, and survival. As your eyelids grow heavier, may the soft gallop of this ancient horse accompany you into dreams. May you rest easy, knowing that some legends still live, not only in books, but in hooves that glide silently beneath a moonlit sky. Thank you for sharing this quiet journey with us. If this story helped you find peace tonight, consider gently tapping that like button or subscribing for more whispered history. Good night, traveler of time. Sleep well, and may your dreams be golden.